Welcome to the Mortal Realms, an Age of Sigmar story phase. Grab your hammer so we can clear a path through the chaos and forge our own narratives in the Age of Sigmar. Your allies through the spiral crux this episode are...
Hey, my name is Paul, and guys, I got a question for you. How is Tzeentch like an absolutely insane Iliathan?
Don't know.
Because both can spawn a cult of 1,000 eyes.
Oh.
I guess.
I'm Vin. I'm here jumping in on this story phase as a passionate follower and Carrick acolyte myself.
And I'm Will. I'm starting with the demon in the mirror, asking him to change my fate.
I'm Aaron, and I'll be here when you are ready to roll with the changes. And in this episode, we cover the lore of the Disciples of Tzeentch Battletome. Get ready to hear a whole lot of insidious plots, unrealized predictions, and hashtag Paul theories. And then if we have time after all that, we'll talk about those hankerin for a changekerin. Okay, they can't all be winners. Hey, how are y'all doing tonight, my fellow Arcanites?
Doing pretty well.
I thought that was going to roll off the tongue a little better.
No, I knew it was going to kind of turn out the way it did.
That's why they keep me around. Excellent. Well, I'm going to address the elephant named Vint in the room. I'm sorry, you're not an elephant. You're a beautiful man.
He's an elephant.
Yeah, elephant. Oh, that's better.
Nailed it.
So, thanks, Will. I'm going to address the elephant in the room and welcome Vint to the story phase. You're a friend of the show, also a Madison native, or I don't know, Madison resident, I guess.
Yes.
Hey, Vint. Thanks for joining.
Hi, how's it going? It's good to be here. I have been doing some Dogs of War Cry podcasting as well, so it's nice to graduate into some story phase.
Don't tell them that like we're the graduating.
I feel like I heard Vin throw his cap into the air. The tassel is flying down.
That's how you made it to the big leagues, my friend. Well, we're glad to have you. And what better time to have you here is the Disciples of Tzeentch Battletome episode. We've been looking forward to revisit this one because eagle-eared listeners may know that we covered Tzeentch a long, long time ago. One of the, if not the first episodes that I was ever on for the Mortal Realms, back when I didn't know nothing about nothing, still don't. But we figured we'd loop back around to Tzeentch and fit it into the newfangled format that we've been doing these Battletome episodes on. So your ears do not deceive you. Yes, we've done Tzeentch before, but we will be doing Tzeentch again. But before we do, I'd be curious to know, you guys, what you've been up to, what's new, what's shaking. I feel like it's been a hot second since I've talked to some of you. So, Paul, I'm going to ask you, what you've been up to in the hobby. Tell us.
I have been working on my army for Holy Havoc, which is a super big secret, so I can't really talk about it. And I'm working on something else secret, so I'm super fun and engaging to listen to.
Are you super fun? Are you a fun guy? Is there mushrooms? Are you talking? Is it?
There may be fungi involved. Yes, absolutely. So,
well, I've been there's Paul, it's always fun guys. Yeah.
Hey.
Made it twice.
I've been working on some Darko Savagers. I'm going to be headed down to Bloomington for a Warcry event for FlatCon just this coming Saturday. And as per standard, I've got some base coats on some of the models, but at least it's Warcry, so I can get it done in time.
Sure.
But I've been really enjoying in the local league playing a lot of my Disciples of Tzeentch in Warcry and writing some fun narratives for that. I'm overdue to put them into the group chat, but it is coming and it is going to be great.
I'm going to be honest. I did not know that you were doing Tzeentch when I invited you to do this episode. So what a happy coincidence. It's almost as if Tzeentch had his hand or hands or claws in this very thing. So very neat.
Be tentacled maws.
All of the above. Every appendage he's got. Will, how about yourself? What you been up to?
I've been keeping it pretty light. I've only pretty much been working on my Holy Havoc stuff, just like Paul, just getting things ready for the end of October.
Okay. Also a secret?
No, I just forgot to say it's going to be my Deepkin. I'm just painting up a Warlord for them. I wanted to pick something that's already mostly done, so I didn't have to do as much.
Nice. Attaboy. Man after my own.
Brilliant.
Yeah, that was a smart idea, Will. I literally had nothing done. So I'm like having to paint everything and get everything done. So
Well, I had most of it done, and then I started painting, and then I went, I can make this less. And so instead of like all of the foot troops, it's just sharks.
ooh, so
A lot
you're jumping
easier
the shark?
thing.
Is that what I'm hearing?
Shark's been jumped. So who is? If I asked you this, but who is your partner? Or is this a partner? This is a partner one, right?
Yep. My partner is going to be Nuno. He hangs out on the Discord all the time, and he helps run the narrative event organizer network
Yeah.
website.
Oh, I didn't know he was going. That'd be fun. That's cool.
That's
That's
gonna be great.
super cool.
Met him at Acon. Right on. Cool dude.
So what's your story then, Will? Because I don't think you get to play alongside Nuno without a story.
This is true. So over the summer, we both participated in an event called Animosity, and we were actually on the same team.
Ooh.
And we're going to be using our same characters from that event, and they will be officially teaming up in person instead of exclusively online like they had been over the past few months.
That's super cool. I'm very excited to hear how that goes. Very excited.
We need to bring back the campaign phase or something so that we can hear some of those stories. No, on the story phase, God, no, that's not what the story phase is for. Wrong story. No fan fiction here. That's mean. I don't mean it that way. And as far as my stuff goes, what am I even working? I guess I'm almost done putting the new Korn Underworld's warband together. It's core chosen of something drum rhymes with drum. I can't remember exactly.
It is. It's drum.
But those dudes are cool as heck, man. Such a new direction for Korn, which is wild. I mean, it's not new drum. They're still got big axes and hammers and stuff, and very like bloody and pokey. But I think it's got a new design element to it, and I think they're really fun to put together. Also, because I'm sure the listeners care, I put a new blade on my hobby knife, and it's like through butter, and it's going so much quicker. Listeners, here's a PSA. If you haven't changed the blade on your hobby knife in a while, I say go spring for a new one. Go slip one on. Be careful. You may not be used to the give and take a little bit. Don't cut yourself, but really it's going to make your life better. That's a PSA from this guy right here.
My heart stopped for a second because I heard I put a new blade on and I thought you had done a conversion.
Yeah, that was my first.
And I literally was like, oh,
that face.
You're not seeing the passive angry face and thumbs down. Like,
I thought we were friends. I thought we were allies.
That's why I was so surprised. I held my breath. I was like, what happened to the Aaron I know?
I thought we were brothers in Sigmar, and you throw that shade in my direction. I gotta reevaluate.
How dare I even imply?
Got to reevaluate how I spend my time. No, never in a million years. So actually, just as an aside, so Eric, I don't know, I posted pictures today that Eric had painted up my Dreadhold a long time ago. I gave him the one that had been like broken in transit and all sorts of like busted pieces, and it was falling apart. And so I didn't necessarily care about it. And then he turned it into a work of art. But the doors on the Dreadhold, like the front gate, they had been busted off their hinges. And so then I saw that he had actually attached them with some sort of, I don't know, metal, whatever, some other mechanical
like
supply or something like that. So basically a conversion. I frowned, I stared at it for a while, and it actually works pretty well. And like the doors swing pretty easily in a good way. So I'm like, damn it, he was right. That was a good conversion. Good job, bud. And so that might be the one and only conversion that is in my hobby room currently. The one and only that I will allow.
Wow.
Cause
way to go, Eric.
He did
to paint a massive terrain piece that Aaron will not possibly give away.
That's the price of entry. Yeah. And then I gave him back my fortified manor, and he's going to touch it up. So really, he's my hobby horse for sure. All right, well, cool. We're going to hop in then to the story phase in just a moment. Hold your horses, because I've been inserting some plugs here, some Mortal Realms plugs. So listeners are going to have to sit through and listen to it real quick, or fast forward a couple of seconds. That's fine too. I won't judge you. But this here is the Mortal Realms podcast. We're talking story phase here, and you can find more episodes of this podcast and all of our other shows at themortalrealms.com. You can also email us any of your feedback or other things. It doesn't have to be feedback. It could be fun pictures. It could be a song that you wrote. It could be perhaps a poem. I don't know. We'll take anything. I just love getting emails. And you can reach us at mortalrealms@gmail.com. With no the. I'm not sure if we own the email address, so don't use it there. Just mortalrealms@gmail.com. You can find our Patreon at patreon.com/themortalrealms. What's that? The is back. Or vice versa, you can get it at themortalrealms.com/Patreon. Your pick, your choice. And you can get early releases of the story phase, which is this show, and access to semi-exclusive content like the Pocket Realms, which are short story phases hosted by yours truly and some guy named Davy, who's fine. I kid. He's the best of all of us, right? Like he's the aspiration that we all try to live up to. And if you cannot or do not want to pitch in monetarily to join that Patreon, that's totally cool. Instead, head on over to your podcast service of choice, like Apple Podcasts or Spotify or some other worse service, and give us a review. As many stars as you'd like. I'll take whatever stars you can give me, and go or you can go tell a friend about the Mortal Realms. That's about it. That's all we want from you, essentially. So, but with that, let's hop into the story phase, which is what the people came here to listen to. Paul, if you would be so kind.
The story phase. In the story phase, we delve into the stories, characters, creatures, and environments of the 9 realms.
We sure do. Try and stop us. You can't. We're going to do it anyways. All right.
I'll beat you, Dubs. I heard you say that I was on notice from the last episode. I don't know if I miffed out or I just thought it was great.
For what? What did I say?
Because Eric did it, and he did it in character.
Oh,
and I don't specifically name a character, but he said it was an ogre character, and it was. I laughed out loud when he did it. So
that was his Soulbound character that he was playing when we were playing with Mr. Mephisto on a recording that we cannot seem to get into my hands because it is so large. But we're working on it. We're making progress.
It's moving slowly but surely.
Slowly but surely. No, Eric literally went to go buy an external hard drive today so that he can transfer it to the hard drive so he can get it to me so that I can start editing it. Like we literally had the recording running for 12 hours straight or something. Like it's a big old file. We'll see.
Who would we hear on that recording? Just for references.
Myself and Will, the two of us. Josh and 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the GM himself, Mr. Mephisto, International Man of Mystery. That's not a tagline. He has all sorts of names that I am forgetting, but I think he's also an International Man of Mystery.
Yeah, International Man of Mystery is actually my team name for Holy Havoc. So
nice.
That is a great name.
I didn't even know. Anyways, guys, Tzeentch is distracting us. He's trying to dissuade us from talking about him, from revealing his secrets, but we will not be another word for distracted. We will not be led astray, and instead we will talk about his very disciples. So here we're talking about the Disciples of Tzeentch Battletome. I got a question for you guys. It's my favorite question, and I think it's everybody else's favorite question too. I think it's growing on you. We're going to start with everyone's best one-sentence description of the Disciples of Tzeentch. Oh, you guys forgot I was going to do it. You should never forget because it's always coming. So I want to hear how you could sum up the Disciples of Tzeentch army faction, however you want to classify it, in one sentence. Paul, go.
Magic-based, eagle-eyed, madness-inducing demons of chaos.
Okay, all right, sure. I don't know if eagle-eyed, I guess they're avian, I suppose. Okay, sure. You know what? Now's not the time to dissect it. Wilson, Vince is the guest. You have to go next again to set the tone so that he has much time to prep.
Let's see. The multiplying, duplicitous, divisionary. No, they know too many things and they know too few. They come at you on 1s and 2s and 4s. They never end. They never stop. All you know is that you do not know.
All right, cool. Go ahead.
You literally said to send in your pomes. Just a minute ago, you said in their poem, and he wrote a poem on the fly. I feel offended. But also, that was awesome.
A bunch of random words.
Yes, all the snaps, Will. All the snaps.
Should have had a 9 in there. Not to critique, but somewhere in there. Anyways, okay, at any rate.
Nice.
It was 9 syllables per line, is
9,
what it was, Will.
You can just add it in the word 9 somewhere.
Splice it in. All right, Vince, so you've got a sense of what we're looking for here. Try and give me your best one-sentence summary of the Disciples of Tzeentch.
Well, let's see here. They never stopped to ask of if they should. They only thought of if they could. And they dialed that up to 9 and broke the knob off. So nobody else could do it before or after them.
Right on. All right. This one goes up to 9.
Yep.
Very cool.
I like it.
Trying to think. I think that's about it.
They took the eightfold path, dialed it up to 9, broke the knob off. See? Simple as that.
There we go.
Left it at that.
Goes to 9.
All right. So that's Tzeentch. That's Tzeentch in a nutshell. Normally, this is where I make the joke where I say, all right, let's wrap it up. We don't need to do anymore. But that joke is old, and I will not do it anymore until I forget next episode, and then I'll pull it back out. Until then, and then it'll be retro. All right.
So you're changing things up?
You got it. Always
Ooh.
do. But I'm guessing. All right. So we're talking about the Disciples of Tzeentch. Let's start at the beginning. Age of Myth, early days. I don't know that we ever talked about something like this in the initial Disciples of Tzeentch episode, but even if we did, maybe we've learned a thing or two since then. But I'd curious to know what you guys' thoughts on where or how or where did Tzeentch come from into the mortal realms? We can't obviously deal with his origin. He's a chaos god. They don't really have those things. But as it relates to the mortal realms, how were we first introduced to Tzeentch? Who's got some thoughts on the matter?
I want to tie it back to your opening statement. He was the man in the mirror watching everything go down. And basically, his key to access the glory that is the mortal realms is civilization. And civilization in particular with those who are like, other people are better than me, but I'm better than them. So we need to change things around to make sure that I can be better than them.
It was as confusing as Tzeentch is. I don't understand a word you're talking about.
No, I got it. It's my life motto, so I'm right there with you.
I think when it comes to Tzeentch in the Age of Myth, the big thing is he was like, you know what? I've got all the time in the world, and I'd rather do this right one time than have to continue to break and fix and break and fix. And I think that's what sets him apart from some of his other Chaos brothers and sisters, and some of the other gods in general. Right? Hey, here's Canaanite. See what you dwarves can do with it. Boy, I can't wait to see what it is. And man, it'd be a shame if it turned into this wildly disparaging thing between your class system. So I could definitely not in any way, shape, or form anarchistically break your whole group. And he just in reading where he comes in the Age of Myth, it's in whispers and secrets, everything you needed to know without telling you anything you should know. Right? Here, you can do anything you want, man. I got your back. Here's all the stuff you need to do it. Yeah, it might cost you the souls of everybody you know, but the job gets done, man.
Small price to pay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, yeah, and like one of the things that really sets it apart is technically two stories, where the first story is as someone is creating the first written language, he's just adding a few words that people shouldn't know. So that way in a later story, those books come back and doom civilization.
Clever girl.
Yeah.
Wouldn't have thought of that one. But I like that sort of is indicative of the idea that like he needed civilization to get a kickstart before like he could get his foothold in, which I mean to some degree was it's kind of what the other chaos gods need in that they build off of like the mortals, whether it's emotion or like the things that they do. And so like this is similar in that vein, but like it's so much more like focused on civilization specifically. Like he needed the written word before he could break in, as opposed to just like anger or I don't know, the cycles of nature or something like that. Like it seemed to be like a step beyond that. And I think Vint was saying that like he was willing to bide his time a little bit. He's willing to wait. Like what's the rush? Which I thought was very cool. We're talking about the Age of Myth and like, you know, essentially how Tzeentch is getting his foothold in the mortal realms as they exist. Did you guys have any stories from the Battletome that was from this time frame that you really enjoyed, that you thought were emblematic of Tzeentch's time in the Age of Myth?
I mean, having touched a little bit on the Canaanite story, like, oh, look at this random metallurgical thing that you can use to make magic metal science stuff. And look at how great it is. Let me introduce it to you. It's definitely in no way, shape, or form going to be bad in the long run. Do your thing with it. Right? And it actually comes across, even in reading it in the Codex, it seems very, very much like a helpful thing. Right? Tzeentch extends his hands and says, let me help you out. There's definitely nothing bad that could happen to you. And then there's a billion pages of fine print that are in a language you can't read. Right? And that's the Canaanite story. I thought that was really cool. I also think the Austrasia Silent story is pretty slick too, with the idea that somebody just ascends into Lord of Changehood or Tzeentch takes them. and it leaves the mystery. And I think that's one of the cool things with it. When you look through any of his stories throughout the Battle Tome, you end up seeing this like air of mystery at the end. Like, what did happen? We might never know.
Yeah, like it sets up down the road where 18 different people could come back and claim they were that king, like 18 different demons, and they could all be lying or having some kind of like plot they're trying to play on you because it's so open-ended.
Yeah.
Well, and it's not out of the wheelhouse of Tzeentch to be like, yeah, demon, so I just made you, and that's really cool and stuff. You're this guy. And the demon's like, but I'm not. I remember everything. You don't. You're this guy. Well, that's fun. Yeah, sounds good.
I really liked the Secrets of the Dark Tongue story because it seemed really emblematic of how Tzeentch acts within the realms, because he basically just made sure that the books that were written with those words that Will was talking about that shouldn't have been in the language fell into the right place, which tended to be this place called the Nazroan Catacombs, a cabal of scholars. And they basically just like sat and read the books. And as they sat and read the books, they got crazier and crazier and crazier. And then they were just like, okay, I got it now. So they had this like dread apotheosis where they're like, okay, we can all go and spread this madness to everyone else. So they just all left. Nothing happened. Like there's no battle. It's literally just like, all right, now I have this core of people that are going to go and spread terror and chaos throughout the realms. And perfect. This is exactly how I want this to work. That's it.
I love how it's so, to my mind, similar to something that like Nurgle would do, right? Like infecting some group of people and then sending them out into the realms, and then like infecting the rest of the realms to some degree. But this isn't a disease per se, but rather they're infected with this madness or this arcane knowledge, or like, this brain warping mentality that's the infection that they go. Like I love how they each took different realm gates out into parts unknown just so they could spread the it's not even a gospel, it's not even like an intentional thing per se. Like they're just going to spread the madness around, which was downright terrible.
I think it's really neat because that story specifically, it echoes again later on in the lore with the Mind Stealer Sphinxes, right? They were a bunch of wizards that just fell to that same kind of madness and were turned accordingly into giant sphinxes. I guess there are worse fates, but it does seem very Tzeentchy in that, hey, this worked once, let's try it again. Wouldn't it be funny if they fell for it twice?
He just got a weird sense of humor, and I'm here for it. Also talking about reading books and then being infected with madness. What is that if not the Moral Realms podcast?
Exactly.
Brendan.
You're never the same.
Like it or not, and we just seem to keep adding people to the
madness.
We're always spreading.
Yeah. Sorry, Ben. You got hooked.
It was all in
been hooked
from day one. You never knew it.
I'll be growing new appendages soon. I'm hopeful.
Yeah, the story I want to talk about is called Seeds of Sedition.
Yeah,
and it really encapsulates a lot of things about Tzeentch, but in a way I didn't really expect it to. Which is, first, it follows up with what Vince was saying about the Canaanite. Tzeentch gave this to folks to see what kind of civilizations they bring up. But then it's got the rich and the poor are praying just for change. Societal change, economic change, any sort of change. And Tzeentch uses that and answers their prayers for them. So he built a society just to undo that plan and bring in demons to tear down the society. You always hear the memes of like Tzeentch kind of going against himself, and this is an example of how he does that, but it kind of works. Like he creates these structures that he then dismantles to spread the faith.
Yeah, right. And so this is yet another example. I feel like I'm always talking about, like, I love to hear how realms fall. Like it seems like I feel like we've been spending more time lately in the lore. Maybe just I wasn't reading it before, or I was oblivious, which is all very true. And that, so here's an example of how Chaman fell. And if this was in a previous battle tome, I was unaware of it, but the idea of this inequity, the haves and the have-nots, and then calling out to Tzeentch, you always often wonder, like, what would cause someone to sort of fall to the chaos gods, or like call to them if they didn't know who they were? Like, how do you fall into that? And so there's a million ways, but this is just yet another example of them getting creative with the ways that folks can succumb to chaos without knowing that they're succumbing to chaos, or putting in a call out to the ether, not knowing who's going to answer. And whoops, sometimes it's a madness-inducing God. Them's the breaks.
Oopies.
Well played with the aether. You put it out into the aether,
and then maybe there'll be a war later with a bunch of Quadrant. So very cool. So that essentially is the hallmark then of the transition from the Age of Myth to the Age of Chaos. Is there any other Age of Myth stuff that you guys wanted to bring up before we turn the clock forward? Is that what a clock sounds like? I don't know. That's not. Is that a clock sound?
It's a weird clock, but
that's better. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure the moral realms are full of weird a clock. All right, Age of Chaos. Tzeentch is here. He's having a field day. I like that they're still sort of not hung up on, but they're sticking to the idea that Tzeentch really had his heart set on Shaman, right? Like he's in all sorts of other places, and everybody sort of knows that chaos doesn't necessarily have boundaries or borders depending on what the realms are, but he had a favorite, and it was the realm of metal. And so we spent a lot of time focusing, I think, on Tzeentch in the Age of Chaos on the realm of metal, which is true to what we've known before. What's Tzeentch up to in the Age of Chaos besides just killing folks? Like what's his how does he spend the time in the Age of Chaos? You guys have any thoughts on that?
I think one of the coolest things, I like following the God Beasts. I've done a lot of story writing and just different stuff for different parts of following God Beasts, and the Load Griffin is just super cool. Like, Load Griffin just descends and hits the Spiral Crux before it was the Spiral Crux and breaks the whole thing. And I think that's just super neat. This giant God Beast descends, and that's so cool because there's nothing really comparable, right? When we talk fantasy or something that helps us get out of our normal day-to-day routine where we don't see giant monsters, and we see some Zangors because Will is around, but otherwise we don't see a lot of other weird things, like maybe Gloomspite here and there, spiders that are sent to assault me during the podcast. Those kind of things happen, but I don't see any giant god beasts descending down and destroying any kind of, like, the Madison Capitol hasn't been assailed by a giant set of jaws that have eaten half of State Street and where I work competitively. Like, there's not some crazy giant monster. And I really think that lately the focus on the God Beasts has just been so cool. Right? They just keep growing, and they get names, and they really add that flavor and that feel to these cataclysmic events that happen. And, like, how do you fix it? Right? And so I really think that the Load Griffin being introduced here is just so cool.
I don't know that we've talked about the Load Griffin story, the Spiral Crux. Have we talked about it on the story phase yet? I feel like we dance around it a little bit. I feel like it comes up sometimes. But does anybody want to quick catch people up if they don't know what the Load Griffin has to do with anything? By all means, now would be a great time to bring it up if anybody wants to run through it quick.
Yeah, so the Load Griffin is this giant griffin made, I would assume, of lodestone with the name. And he flies straight down, seeing all this Caymanite, that's this magic items and things, much like Smog or any other major dragon you've read. But he's a griffin, and he smashes into all these Caymanite islands that are on the ground, and he hits them so hard that they shatter into the Spiral Crux, and it sends islands up into the air, and it destroys a big part of that civilization and pushes so many of these Duradin that are working so hard to craft all of Cayman into this, or Shimon, sorry, into this giant clockwork mechanism that works perfectly every time. And nothing screams changer of ways like I threw a griffin at it and broke the whole thing. And I just, the imagery of all these Duradin looking up and their beards just like slowly going up in the air from the amount of load in the air, and levitation magic and all this other stuff as they get disintegrated is pretty cool. It's pretty neat. But that is the story of the Load Griffin. So he smashes in, and before you get into towards the end of the Age of Chaos, his fate doesn't work out so well for him. As he gets melted, Tzeentch convinces a bunch of Duradin to melt him into gold, to transform, like use transformation magic to transform him into gold. And as he screams, his death screams rip open the realm as he dies and opens up all of this giant split in reality, and all the scintillating legions jump through and rip up what the spiral crux is today and make it the advanced horror scape it really becomes.
So it's kind of like a twofold way, because we had talked about like folks praying to Tzeentch to, hey, look, solve this inequity and whatever. And that's one like foothold that he had in the region. But like, I think this was a big cataclysm and catalyzing event, this Lode Griffin death scream, which also opened up a pretty wide portal and was also a kickoff moment for, I think, the Age of Chaos too, right?
Well, and I think it shows some of Tzeentch's MO, and there's not a lot of those you can see throughout his advancement through the ages. But if one is good, two is better, right? I want my demons in, right? 9 is perfect. We're going to destabilize the area. We're going to attack it from inside. We're going to turn it on itself and turn it on its head. We're going to get other things to advance without stealing too many of the other stories that happen in this time. But then at the end of it, I win, and it's going to be a giant hole in reality, and all my demons are going to pour out and kill all of these hopeless individuals, and they're all going to be asking me to stop, and I will say, sure, if you want to be a Zangor.
True. Did the rest of your crew have any other Age of Chaos stories that you want to bring up too? Because I feel like now's the time.
Yeah, I did. First, what I found interesting about this section is that it's not that big. He's one of the Chaos gods, and his section for the Age of Chaos is not as large as the others. And the reason that really stood out to me is because, like we kind of talked, he sort of relies on civilization to do things, like to corrupt it. So the story I wanted to talk about is him kind of taking advantage of it. It's the Nightmare Arcanum. Essentially, as all of the elves of Hysh are just sort of killing each other in the Spirefall, sort of causing their own devastation, instead of like enacting massive plans or doing all these things, he's just going to take advantage of the situation, and all of his hordes just run in to all of these elven sanctuaries and just steal as many things as they can. Like, he's not one to enact this grand plan. Right now, this is Tzeentch of acting wild, doing crazy things, stealing knowledge, and then getting out of there.
Which is fun because it kind of leads into a little bit of the arcane cataclysm like box that we were talking about, and it's actually in this book too, so we'll probably bring it up later. But the relationship between Tzeentch and his followers and the quest for like forbidden knowledge, and then also like tapping into the knowledge that the Lumineth have gained, right? So like you think, oh, Tzeentch probably knows everything or pretty close to it, but like there's still knowledge out there that his forces don't have and that it's worth them getting. And so this is a fun capering adventure where they like have to sneak in and grab that that stuff. So there's always more knowledge to be gained. There's no such thing as all knowing in the moral realms, which is neat.
Or even if he knows everything, he's not telling his followers everything, so they need to go find it.
Yeah, very withholding. You got to earn it for this guy. Okay. I think what we should probably talk about, just because it's part of the larger story, or at least it taps into the Realm Gate Wars, is that during the Age of Chaos, the sorcerer Efrix finds or learns of the whereabouts of Sigmar's legendary hammer, Gal Maraz, which I'm sure this has been talked about at some point in the Moral Realms, probably one of the earlier episodes when they were talking about the Realm Gate Wars and some of those campaign stories. But it's worth bringing up again that Age of Chaos, they found Gal Maraz because Sigmar threw it at some illusion or something and he lost his hammer. He was pretty upset. He went to sulk for a bit. At some point in this Age of Chaos, Tzeentch's followers found that hammer. They aren't able to use it explicitly. They can't pick it up. They can't, throw it at stuff themselves. It's very, very Thor's hammer-esque in that regard. But they can absorb energy off it or use it to power their different like spells and all sorts of weird-ass stuff that they do. And so it's at this point where it's been found, it's been captured. Tzeentch has got it, and this guy is tapping into its power, which is then going to lead to storylines later on when the ages shift, which they're about to do. Any other Age of Chaos stuff that you guys want to talk about? Because what comes next, it's everyone's favorite age, and by that I mean it's Sigmar's favorite age, the Age of Sigmar. Who'd have thought? Lightning bolt, lightning bolt, lightning bolts. The Stormcast Eternals strike the mortal realms. Shaman is no exception. For these early days of the Age of Sigmar, how does Tzeentch fare? How does he spend his time? What's it look like for Tzeentch? Do you guys have any thoughts about that?
There's a fun little story that just talks about how there is a false architect that helps in the construction of a bunch of free cities. because he just like basically messes up the plans. So they're not as good as they think they are. But again, it's the long game of like, yeah, eventually something cool will happen here for Tzeentch.
Well, and the false architect, that is a name that does come up.
Oh,
it does indeed.
I didn't put two and two together.
Yeah, I didn't know if you had known, Aaron, if you wanted to call it out.
I missed it, but I'll bring it up now. Okay, so I'd put this question later, but because I didn't, the name is so weird that it should be weird enough that it jogged my memory, but it didn't. Guys, now's the time where we'll start talking about listener questions. Listener questions, you might ask. What's that? Well, I'll tell you. If you wanted to ask a question of us on the Moral Realms, it's easy to do. All you have to do is hang out in the Moral Realms Discord, which can be found at themoralrealms.com/Discord. I'll say again, themoralrealms.com/Discord. Paul, I beat you. And hang out there all day long, which most people do. Many people do. Great, awesome individuals are doing it constantly. And I'll pop in and I'll say, hey, guys, we're going to record an episode. You got any questions? And you're like, yeah, of course I do. And then you ask those questions and I'll put them in the show. Just like this, a patron of the show, Lichcast. It's been a while since they've asked a question. Welcome back, Lichcast. They wanted to know, are there any continuation to the story thread of an individual named Valius Maliti, Sigmar's chief architect and Tzeentch cultist? Apparently, this person kicks it in Greywater fastness. He says he felt like the last time we heard of this guy was when Brock Grungsing left Greywater immediately after meeting him. That's an aside. The point is he wanted to know if this guy comes up in this here Battletome, and lo and behold, he does in this story that Paul's talking about. Paul, do you have more to add? Or I guess Will, too, if you had any thoughts. You guys can find it out.
I didn't particularly. I thought it was super cool and just very representative of how Tzeentch works. And it's one of those things where you can always put this in later, and then it'll like really resonate. And it's one of those little plot hooks that anybody can pick up at any point. And since it's just so vague, it could literally be any city, any free city in the Mortal Realms. And I like those a lot. It's super fun.
Very cool. This guy seems to get around. He seems to... Greywater fastness, but it sounds like he's also using. He just says Realmstone. I thought it was going to be Chamonite. But chief architect, apparently he gets to a lot of different places. I wonder how a guy can be in so many places at once. What's going on with this dude? Will, do you have any thoughts on who this individual might actually be?
Yeah. So, sadly, to answer Lichcast's question, there's no real update when it comes to Greywater fastness in the Battletome. Looking through it, but like this person is like the leader of the city. He'd almost be like, what is it, Aventus Firestrike for Hammerhall?
Yeah.
Or so he like should be in charge, and it should be a huge deal that we find out that the guy who runs Insidious Sigmar is the changeling himself.
That's what I was looking for. There you go.
But it never comes up. They say he's the changeling, and then they run away, which is the classic Tzeentch move to give you just a teensiest bit of knowledge and then scampering off.
The classic Tzeentch move is to say, "It was me all along." You're running out into the sunset.
And you dang kids and your dog too. I believe that we were talking about it in the Discord, and so Lichcast probably saw this at some point. But for those who aren't in the Discord all the time, first of all, what's wrong with you? Second of all, I believe Sage Mutt, who is a lore aficionado on our Discord server, he brings up that this fella actually apparently is mentioned in Soulbound Blackened Earth quite a bit, apparently. And that's the Soulbound supplement. It's like an adventure, but it's also like a city guide for Greywater fastness. And I have not read it yet. I've got it sitting on the computer. I just haven't cracked it. And so there might be great information in there for anybody else who wants to learn more about Valius Maliti, Greywater fastness, or the changeling. I was going to say curseling. There's too many C blankling things in the Tzeentch book. Come on, diversify, Tzeentch. You're all about infinity. Cool. Well, let's just keep on coming. I feel like I narrowed it down quite a bit, right? Early days of Age of Sigmar, done and done. Like we've mined that for interesting stuff. Let's keep it.
We talked both stories.
True. And on that same vein, what comes after that? But what the AOS 2.0 era, the Necroquake time frame. I'd be curious. I feel like we haven't talked about Tzeentch in this context in a while. It doesn't take up a lot of space in the book. But what's the Time of Tribulations era for Tzeentch? What does that look like? What is he up to and his followers around this time frame? Do you guys have any thoughts?
He's just chilling. So first, I don't know if this came up during the Soul Wars itself, but it was Tzeentch that figured out what it was that Nagash was doing, and it was like Tzeentch that hired the Skaven to mess everything up. I know, like in the book, it kind of talked about all the gods. I think they were just the kids in college classes that let him do all the work, and then they take all the credit.
So I'm actually there, not because I actually know that I'm right, but more because to me this is my favorite thing. Right, Tzeentch book is the epitome of the unreliable narrator. Right. So it's like Tzeentch was like, this is totally my idea. We have no way of proving that.
Right.
No way of disproving that. It's like, yeah, no, I totally believe it. This is totally something that you would do. Doesn't mean you actually did it, but like, all right, I buy it. This is the way the story goes now. Again, another thing I love about Tzeentch.
Yeah. Well, it uses the gotcha card of the changeling told me. Like, you could just do that for anything. How'd you find out about this? Oh, the changeling told me. Don't worry about it.
He built Greywater fastest, and then he scurried on over to Shyish, or he was there all along. It's wild. One tidbit in this story that jumped out at me was that he called in a long-standing debt from the Great Horned Rat. What kind of debt are we talking here? See, the Necroquake story, fairly uninteresting, or we've covered it before. There's not, but like you're gonna throw out a debt here. Like, what kind of debts do like these chaos gods have? Like, what kind of conversations are they wheeling and dealing on? And does the Great Horned Rat does he deal in debt, like in like favors and stuff? I'm curious. Tell me more.
I got a hashtag Paul theory.
No, of course you do.
How do you think the Great Horned Rat became a chaos god?
What do you think for this?
No, because Tzeentch manipulated him into it. And that's the debt that I think he's calling out. He's like, all right, I got you into the Pantheon. You can do this for me.
I like it. It was my first thought.
As far as Paul theories go, that's a pretty good one. Okay, I'll say that that's not bad. Do I think it's true? Absolutely not. But like, it's closer to true than most things. Yeah.
I have a different theory for how the debt came about.
Tell me.
Because like both the Great Horned Rat and Tzeentch are schemers.
Mm-hmm.
I almost feel like they're treating it almost like to use a biblical reference, a Job scenario where they're just like betting on something with mortals, and the loser owes the other one a favor. And the Great Horned Rat probably went all in on something, but he's Skaven, so he had no idea. He loses the bet, and now Tzeentch is calling it his dues.
Okay.
See,
I like that.
Now I'm
too.
just imagining that Nagash is Job, and it just works so perfectly because he's just this guy who's just like, I do everything right. I plan everything so well, and everything falls apart all the time, but it's not my fault.
What kind of whale does Nagash find himself in?
See, I think that the bet is probably, or the debt owed, right? So it talks about it a little bit, not to jump ahead, but in the Broken Realm series, where there's a Skaven running around on a silver tower, a Deathmaster with his few clan rat buddies, and they help out Baelacor, and it definitely reeks of Tzeentch. Like, oh, look, we magically had this portal that was where you needed to be in this unsurpassable thing with this absolute fortress of Tzeentch, and you somehow made it through by the skin of your teeth. Be a shame. And like, it's just the amount that the two seem to work together but not scheme. When I was reading this book earlier and talking with a couple of buddies, one of the things that was asked right out of the gate was like, do you think Tzeentch and the Great Horned Rat go and have drinks together? And I was like, oh, absolutely. Without a question. These two are drinking buddies. They play dice together, and the dice are mortal fates and mortal things. But realistically, like the gnaw holes and how they work and the magic tied to them, I could see Tzeentch having a direct hand in and helping that way. I also could see Tzeentch manufacturing a favor and the Great Horned Rat not caring enough and being like, wait, you need my people to act on avarice? Oh boy, hold the phone. Let me not call anybody and they'll just do it. Like, and they all win out of this, right? You have some of the most powerful Skaven spells ever come out of this time. You have some of the most powerful spells ever come out of this. And Tzeentch doesn't, it talks about it in the Arcanum Optimar part of the book, but he doesn't have to do the work, and he gets to play with all the toys. Man, it is. He's like the two of them are sitting kind of on their porch in a college town, and somebody just like a truck full of beer broke down, and they just happened to have the right part to fix it, and they charged him all the 24 packs he had. Everybody's happy. They go away, sit and drink, and watch all the world explode because both of them walk out of that pretty well. Even though the Necroquake was for Nagash, I feel like Tzeentch and the Great Horn Rat like fist bumped when it happened. Like, cool story, bro. Good job, Nagash. Do some more of our homework for us, nerd.
And he explicitly says, to quote, Tzeentch drinks in this mayhem delightedly, and his demented laughter echoes across the void.
Yeah.
Good point.
Yep.
I will say I would have
Hashtag Vint Series, Paul.
step two. I do, in hindsight, thought there would maybe be more involvement of Tzeentch, like sort of after the fact, right? Like, I never really thought that he stood out in this Arcanum Optimar, where it really seems like he ought to have, right? If he's going to be the Chaos God of Magic, I would have thought he would have had a bigger presence in sort of the beyond the just cackling at the fortune of it all. I would have thought that he would have taken the foreground or forefront of maybe some of the stories after that time frame, but not necessarily. Maybe to some great degree he didn't need it. Like, he's already the master of magic. What does he need more magic?
So it does kind of stand out in a way, like, and this could just be a because of writing in general, but it always feels like when it's not his plan, he just kicks back and enjoys it.
Mm-hmm.
He only cares if he's the one setting everything off. So since he didn't do the Necroquake, all of his plans kind of like need to reset. And while he's resetting, he's going to kick back and drink a cold one while he think of what's going to come next.
Sure. Okay, good point. All right, that's true. That's true.
Well, and if you go through like, and I'm sure this is harkening way back, but if you go through the Malign Sorcery stories, he has an active role in a few of those. So he plays a very active role with these spells, putting them in the right place at the right time, letting them be taken control of at the right time. Like the Predatory Endless spell, even with like Ravenak, it kind of smells of Tzeentch. Like, oh, Ravenak's jaws killed all the bad guys that happened to be, Gors and Zangors. Be a shame if it turned around and ate all the Sylvaneth that it was trying to protect too. For shame. Like, definitely comes through that he's active there, but that's not tied to this book. So feel free to.
How dare you insert lore that's not part of this battle tome?
Yeah.
I am ashamed.
So AOS 2.0 doesn't spend a lot of time on it because it really wants to get to the AOS 3.0, the era of beasts, that Broken Realmsy, post-Broken Realmsy time frame is where maybe the real interesting stuff may or may not be happening. And I want to ask you guys, I'll get to generally what does this mean for Tzeentch, but we got a couple of questions about this time frame, and I want to ask them. The problem is I know I'm going to ask them in the wrong order. And so this is going to be clunky. I'm sorry. I know it's going to happen right off the bat. And we're going to jump from one to the other. It's not going to make any logical sense. So I'm just going to shotgun a few, and we'll use that to start the conversation. Patron of the show, Mealhern, had a couple good ones about the Age of Beasts, and let's talk about them. First one. How many Dawnbringer Crusades have been infiltrated by Tzeentch? And so we'll use that as a jumping off point. Dawnbringer Crusades infiltrated by Tzeentch. What is he even talking about? And how many do we think he's actually infiltrated? Who wants to talk about a little bit of that?
Oh my goodness, so many.
I would say the answer is yes.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean,
How many is he infiltrated?
all of them is probably a safe bet.
Yeah, so Dawnbringer Crusades, for those who may not know, is Sigmar's attempt at restabilizing the frontier of AOS, sending people out to establish cities by building everything on top of an arcane nexus. So the reason we say all of them is because we just mentioned the great architect of all of his cities is the Changeling, and all of these arcane nexuses may fall to Tzeentch at some point soon.
And so, like, he knows, we're talking about how Tzeentch has his hand in, like, civilization, right? Well, they're re-civilizing a lot of locations, and thus that's where Tzeentch wants to be. In fact, and then to put it on top of the fact that they're putting it on these sites of arcane power, just choice locations for Tzeentch. And so because of that, I think he wants to insert his followers in every single one that he can. I think if we're playing Price is Right rules, I think you probably have to say all -1 just so you can get underneath. You want to undersell it. But my money is every last one of them out there has got a Tzeentchian touch to it.
They actually spend quite a bit of time on that actually in the beginning of the lore for this book, talking about the different Dawnbringer Crusades, talking about how they specifically will mess with the locations where they're going they'll be like, oh, which reminds me of one of the Black Libraries novels that I read, which was Dominion, where it was kind of like, okay, well, are they in the right place? Are they not? Who knows? Maybe something will work. Maybe it won't. I'm not giving away any of the story here, I don't think. It's just more of when you're wandering out in the middle of nowhere and you're like, okay, this hill is the super cool hill that will completely save our city and make sure that we are completely fine. Is it really the super cool hill? Or is it maybe the hill next to it? Or maybe the hill after that? Who really knows, right? And so it was cool to have that delineated within the lore. I like that a lot.
I know I mentioned that Milhorn had a couple questions. We'll go back to his other question, but I think this maybe leads into a different question asked by Chrisling in the Discord. And they ask, does Tzeentch have any new goals or schemes for the new future? And I think it kind of ties into the Dawnbringer Crusades, finding those locations, like these arcane nexuses out in the world. But I feel like we learned a little bit, and I was going to try and pull it up about like Tzeentch's mentality or methodology in this new time frame. There's a bit of in the early parts of the Battletome talking about how he discover some book or something? Like he has some new knowledge that he didn't have before. What was that all about?
Yeah, it's the Codex Astromantica.
Yeah.
I know for a fact I pronounced it correctly, and if you think I'm wrong, you're wrong.
Sure.
I thought it was the Astra Romantica.
When a man...
That's the romance novel.
But it's essentially a bit of knowledge that Tzeentch doesn't have, which is something the Seraphon have, which is essentially all the ley lines and all the arcane nexus points where magic energy is gathering. And it gives us a few different options on how he possibly stole this book from the Seraphon, which is funny because it gives us multiple choice, but then one of the stories ties into future lore, which I think we'll cover here in a little bit. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so he's specifically trying to go after these ley lines, and he's specifically trying to undo the plans of the Seraphon. And conveniently, he's trying to map this all out, and then Sigmar is loudly proclaiming, hey, I've got this cool map and I'm going to build buildings to harness this energy. Sure would be a shame if someone interrupted it and then turned his back to Tzeentch, which is the worst thing to do.
I feel like Tzeentch's constant role is just the guy you cut to when something weird happens. And Tzeentch is just like, it was me all along.
Whenever someone says something that is the equivalent of famous last words, and then it cuts to Tzeentch messing with it, right? And that's the end of that chapter. Well, not quite. So I thought this Codex Astromantica, anyways, I thought that was cool. Like it's you're always looking for that new thing in these Battletomes, right? And so sometimes you're sorely disappointed because there are no new things. But this one had this new thing. Tzeentch sort of has a specific goal, has something new to his character, his character, like the character of what his army is trying to do. And they do spend some time focusing on it, which I thought was valuable. And for that, it elevates the book a little bit because they're spending some time on that stuff. We'll talk more about that when maybe we review it at the end. But this is a plus in my book, in Aaron's Battletome. Very cool. Other thoughts about Tzeentch having new goals or schemes before I ask some more questions?
I guess tangentially related, should we talk about the aftermath of him stealing that book and what he's doing the lore?
By all means, hit me.
Specifically, when he steals the book, one of the multiple choice options the book gives you, because it's like Paul said, it's an unreliable narrator, is they attack a Seraphon vault ship in space and it crashes to the realms. And that's the last we hear of it, except we find out that Warcry and I think even Underworlds are possibly taking place in the wreckage of this crashed Seraphon vault ship. Mm-hmm. So it's a footnote in the Battletome, but it's a massive lore drop for some of the other game systems, which is neat.
Yeah. And I think in the Warcry book, it plays a little coy with what caused the ship to crash in the first place. And there's this weird flame all over the place. Like maybe Tzeentch had a hand in it. Well, okay, we're in the Tzeentch book and it talks about crashing a vault ship. So maybe this is the other shoe dropping on that little tidbit in the Warcry book. That's there. What could be the confirmation of that, which is, it's good that fell in that order, so to speak. So.
It's a very Tzeentchian thing for them to put a mystery in one book and then to cut to him going, yeah, that was me.
Yeah, you got it. You got it in one. Good guess. You caught me. Hands up in the air, or tentacles up in the air. I don't know what he's got. So yeah, very cool. All right, here we go. Mealhorn had back to patron of the show. Thank you very much. Mealhorn asks, what is the Chaos God's reaction to Kragnos and the Age of the Beast? So we'll pause there. I know this is a clunky time to even bring it up, but like the Age of Beast aspect of this 3.0 era, is there any sort of beast element that taps into Tzeentch as we've seen it here? Do you guys have any thoughts on that?
Yeah. So first, I want to talk about the story titled "Era of the Beast."
Oh, that's weird. What a coincidence!
It's so wild how that pans out.
Literally,
like it's been fated to happen. Yeah, and it's just like the section talking about the Era of Beast. I'm thinking, oh, how is he going to manipulate this? Use magical schemes, but it gets very literal in the sense that more and more people are just turning into Zangors. Just turning into the bestial followers of Tzeentch, and he's just allowing this to happen and trying to speed it up with magic as much as he can.
Whoops, all Zangors.
Yeah, it's another situation where like he didn't plan something out, so he's just kicking back and enjoying the spoils of someone else's failure.
Mm-hmm. I think, does it say at one point in the book where it's like all this like violence of like, you know, the sort of physical nature? He's like, that's not really for me. Nah, that's cool.
Yeah,
let it go, but like it's tangential. You mentioned the Zangors. I was going to bring this up later when we talked about Zangors in the units, but since you said so, I'd be remiss if I didn't go back to a Chris Link question. They ask, are Zangors benefiting from the feral nature of the Era of the Beast? I should have predicted that this is maybe where we would talk about it, but yes, it seems as if they are, which makes a lot of sense. Good job, Battletome writer. You called it. And Chris Lane, good job. You called it too. Very cool. Second part of Mealhorn's question was, are there any hints about Be'lakor's plans? Apparently, we're interested in Be'lakor because Darth Alec also asked about Be'lakor. He says that any mention of Be'lakor, he seems to be the big schemer on the Chaos side now. So Be'lakor has been brought up. Any sight of Be'lakor in this here Battletome that you guys caught?
I was just going to say, I think the tie-in is that the huge role that's played. We talked about the vault ship going down, but I feel like, again, between Be'lakor and Tzeentch, there must have been some kind of agreement because, right, a silver tower gets aced in space during the Age of Beasts, during the Broken Realms, right? It just gets blown up by Seraphon, and they're like, haha, we did it. And Be'lakor's like, cool story, bro. Now I know how to do the thing that you just tried to do to me, and I'm going to do it all over the place. So thanks. We needed the answer key. You gave it willingly. Appreciated. And you see the Tzeentch tie-in here because the Gaunt Summoners aren't his, and they talk about that a lot. But they also talk about how, like, Atrazan, who's he's somebody who works for the Eternal Conflagration host, and he just wants to set the world on fire. So he, oh, what? That wasn't covered in the bylaws.
Yeah, because we'd never make any money if we explained it to people. We spring it.
Yeah.
Oh, well, there we go. Paul, thanks. Thanks for the heads up. I figured you would have told me, but here we are. Just as planned. So so he shows up and he's there when the Silver Tower goes down. He's there at the Siege of Vindicarum. Atrazan is a character, super cool, in just his wanton lust for burning everything to the ground with magic. Cool, like it, big fan. But he works with and for Be'lakor, yet still runs alongside Tzeentch, does Tzeentchian plot stuff. He's still a card-carrying member of now both teams, and so it just seems like they work together from the Broken Realms, and that their allegiance is pretty scary for the rest of the crew.
It's so interesting that Tzeentch, his followers are so willing, or maybe not willing in the case of the Gaunt Summoners, but more so than any other gods are out there working with other, I guess, chaos elements, but or maybe specifically the Slaves of Darkness elements. But this is another example of them, or at least the call out in the Chaos Gods book, in this case the Tzeentch book, referencing how they're being sort of used in that other ways with the undivided chaos element, which I thought was very cool. You guys have other, I guess, Be'lakor thoughts? I think Eternal Conflagration was what I wanted to bring up, the Siege of Vindicarum, which in hindsight we knew about previously, but it does reference it again here in this book. So other thoughts before we keep going?
I didn't have a Bellicor thought, but there was a quick little thing. There's just one sentence, but it mentioned how the era of the beast has made magic more volatile now. And not just the era of the beast, but in general, the soul wars with Nagash messing with magic, and now Alariel messing with magic, and Teclis messing with magic, that there actually may be a consequence for all of this. I'm going to harness the realms to do the things that really don't seem possible. And Tzeentch is actually looking forward to taking advantage of that at some point. It seemed like to me. So I thought that was...
I'm sure it'll be fine. I don't think anything is going to come of that. Like, it's just... There's no way.
What's the worst that could happen? Cut to Tzeentch.
It's still me. I'm still doing it. All right, very cool. So that was a lot of listener questions all in a row. People were really interested in this time frame, rightfully so, because that's where I think a lot of the new stuff in this book I think stems from a lot of this era. So very neat. Were there any other stories from this time frame? So we answered questions. Do you guys have any stories in the book that you wanted to bring up?
I had kind of an observation as we go through it. Was that you see Tzeentch doing things, right? We just talked about how the Necroquake, he's like, cool. And even with some of the Broken Realms, he's like, neat. But when it comes to this part of the book, you see Tzeentch doing things. He's out in force, being the deep-seated planner, being the hazardous map, right? He's being the things he said he would be all those years ago, and I think it's cool because it means he's ramping up for something big. And again, he's the changer of ways. Could all be smoke and mirrors, but it feels like he's actually doing some big stuff. And I think that's kind of cool. Maybe the next age will be the age of Tzeentch. Who knows?
What if he's ramping up to something little though? Like just to keep you guessing. Like just you'll never know if he's zigging or he's zagging. It's just a bunch of little stuff. Tzeentch.
Right. He's just going to punk a couple more cities to be like, hey, get out of here.
I do want to call out the fact that in this battle tome, they do have the example of referencing the battle box that did just happen. I know Paul likes when they do that, and they've done it here. So they spend some time. Actually, we kind of talked about thinking about what we chatted about with Doug on the previous episode. We sat there and wondered because we didn't have this book yet. We wondered, hey, this seems like one of those timeline little blurb stories. I'm talking about Arcane Cataclysm. I wonder if it'll be one. I wonder if it will be the blurb in the either the Tzeentch or the Lumineth Battletome. I haven't read the Lumineth one yet, but so here we are. Lo and behold, that Arcane Cataclysm is in fact they call it the duelist sorcery in here, but basically they summarize what happened in that battle box. I will not do that now because we spent many hours doing that previously. Double many hours because he had to do that episode twice. And so I ain't going to do it a third time. That would be excessive. 2 times was excessive, in fact.
I'm going to double down on something else, though.
Hit me. Don't literally hit me.
So speaking of box sets, they also referenced Ether War. And they talked about how Grungni has returned to the realms, which is part of the Broken Realms series. But then they talk about how the Caradron Overlords have renewed the Ether War with a vengeance, launching mass naval bombardments on Tzeentch-held regions in the Spiral Crux. Love it. Not only do we have, hey, this is the reference of the box set that was there, but also this is what's happening now. Not only did we give you that narrative, here's how that narrative is continuously unfolding. I think that is the first time we've ever seen that, and that's fantastic. Love it, love it, love it.
And I also love that it calls out that the title of the box set was not just a singular event or a singular battle as a battle box, but it is an ongoing campaign that is happening.
Absolutely.
They do a good job of just having little one line or one sentence in these stories that like imply a lot more than you think about or than you realize when you first read the sentence. So we're talking about Grungni coming back to the realms. The way they lead into that story is even the changer of the ways is shocked to discover that the dwarven smith god Grungni has returned to the realms. Surprised? Is Tzeentch ever surprised by anything? And of all the things that he's surprised by, why would this be the thing that surprised him? Frankly, it didn't even surprise me that Grungni was coming back to the realms. I would have put money on it eventually happening. But then again, I guess that's the difference between me reading a story and Tzeentch living it, so to speak. But like the fact that this occurred and surprised him, it doesn't seem like this is the sort of thing that should catch him off guard. And like, what about it catches him off guard? What secret is there that he didn't expect? Or is it just a throwaway line and he's not really surprised and this is just the author writing nonsense? I don't know. But like that threw me for a loop. I was surprised that Tzeentch was surprised that Grogny was heading back to the realms. Like, he wasn't dead. Like, he was going to come back eventually.
Yeah.
I have a theory. I have a
I'm sure you do. Tell me.
You know why Tzeentch was surprised? Because Jordan don't use magic. And so Tzeentch can't see what they're doing because they don't use magic. They use runes.
Sure. Okay, yeah.
I like that, Paul.
I liked your other one better, but sure, that's not awful. I won't explicitly
You
say.
can't bat 1,000, all right? You got to go like 667 at best.
If I dislike one, I'll flat out tell you no, and I will not tell you no. That was within the realm of reason.
I'm doing bad if it's within the realm of reason. Like, that's not what it's supposed to do, right?
You're not living up to your full potential. So yeah, we'll see where that comes. The fact that they bring it up here that Grogny's hit the realms, return to the realms. I think I've said it before, but like I never even realized that he left, honestly. And so this is yet another example of them touching on it again. I think that this is building to something too. We've talked about, the unification of the Duarten and like, what does that mean for the future? I think this is yet another example of, I think the fact that they keep on touching on it means that something inevitable is going to happen.
One of the things I think that I took away from this book too is at one of the other points they talk about how even though the Caradron are assaulting the Spiral Crux and the Aether War is renewed, I believe the exact quote was something like, but they'll soon find out that there is only one master of the Spiral Crux. And I was like, yes, Tzeentch, get him, like, suit up, put those dukes up, man. Put those boxing gloves on.
You can't give it back to Grogny. He left. He lost. He didn't call seat save or seat check. There's a new metal dude in charge. Get on board, Grogny. Cool. Other stories from this era before we get out of these eras entirely. Are we caught up?
I really want to talk about Mistrust Reigns. So Mistrust Reigns is specifically a Dawnbringer crusade, but it's launched from Settler's Gain, which we've heard a lot about, and so it's kind of fun to hear something from the Tzeentch Battletome talking about a Lumineth city. And they're going to go to the Mons Speculari, which is actually, I think, something that we've heard from before. And basically, all of a sudden, stuff just starts to go wrong. Little things, not big things, but like the Aqua Duranus turns rancid. Oh,
I didn't know it could do
really
that,
not
by the way.
supposed to happen. Which may be the first time that we've actually heard Realmstone be subverted. However, we're not in the realm of Garan, so I buy it. Then we have all this kind of stuff, but incited by the charismatic Master Hierophant, Anuka Tirna. The interesting thing to me is we haven't heard the word Hierophant, to my knowledge, since the Old World and Tomb Kings. And so I'm wondering if this was an intentional use or if it was an aside of like, oh yeah, we'll just use this word.
I think it's semi-intentional in the sense that with a lot of Zentil and Settlers Gain stuff, I do feel like they pull in a lot of similar imagery and verbiage.
Agreed. And basically the way this story goes on, which I also really like, is that they basically are like, everything's terrible. This is horrible. We need to just figure out how to save ourselves. And so they go to a specific ruin that they have been actually told by the Lumineth, you can't go here. And they're like, but this is the only safe passage. And they get there, and then there's a Lumineth army waiting and saying, nope, you can't come here. Not taking them anywhere else, not assisting them in any way, just saying, yeah, there's only safe place that's here for miles. You can't go here. And then they start fighting. And it was a really great little thing to show two order factions fighting. Completely believable, completely relatable, and really well done. And until another group of Lumineth show up and go, wait a minute. This doesn't make sense. We shouldn't be fighting. The mysterious Tirna has already shed her disguise, once more donning the mask of the Magister Azateth of the Cult of 1,000 Eyes. I thought that was just super fun and a great way of adding a little bit of lore to one of the Battletome factions, which they don't always do, right? Usually it's just like, this is the faction. Moving on. This is the faction, moving on, but actually demonstrating how this faction works within one of the stories I thought was super fun and really enjoyable.
I thought for sure she was going to be the changeling again, because it's always the changeling.
Yep. But a different faction. So, and they're the spies, and they totally revere the changeling. So it totally makes sense that she would act like it. So
I'm not 100% sure. It's still not the changeling. I mean, I think maybe it still is.
fair. The changeling's real name is Tyrna. No
So
one knows, but yes.
Yeah. Well, and the story really highlights like how Tzeentch tends to operate, where a lot of these situations could possibly occur without his guiding hand, which is why he's so subtle. He doesn't. Who knows if he even needed to do that much to get that fight to actually happen?
Yeah, true. Just a little nudge. All it takes. Cool. Any other stories or timeline stuff y'all want to talk about? I lost my notes. Oh, I found them. All right, so here we go. We'll take a break from all that. And let's get into some other broader strokes. So now is the point where I like to talk about how the faction is, maybe organized. How do they live? How do they exist in the moral realms? Sometimes, quote unquote, at home. There's no home for Tzeentch. Home is everywhere. Home is in your brain and in your heart. That's where Tzeentch kicks it. But do you guys have any thoughts? Anything jump out at you in terms of the organizational structures of Tzeentch, how they persist, what they're doing, how they spend their time in the mortal realms? You guys got any thoughts on that front? It's very vague. Do with it as you will.
I mean, Tzeentch spends his time in the mortal realms, not Tzeentch the god, but Tzeentchian forces, by literally just doing everything that you would assume a normal person is going to do. They make candles, they're butchers, they work in the libraries. They just show up. And that's, again, one of the things that I really enjoy about this faction is they're just normal people, especially the mortals. The Arcanites are literally just normal people. And then they put these masks on and they become these massive, muscled brutes that can fight everything. But without the mask, they're just normal people. Old, young, doesn't matter. And it's a fun thing. So yeah, what does Tzeentch do? Literally everything.
Yeah.
Imagine any job in the mortal realms, they do that.
Princes, paupers, and everything in between. And this isn't even the direction I intend, or I had no intention as to what direction we were going to go, but this is a great way to bring it up, or a great way to jump into this stuff is, like those followers out there are doing everything in secret. Like they could be your butcher, your baker, they could be your candlestick maker. But at the same time at night, they're not going home. They're going to underground, sites, fonts of power, and worshiping profane gods. And they're all wearing their masks. Nobody knows, not often like all their cultists aren't going to know who else is in their cult, because it's all about secrecy and smoke and mirrors and all this jazz. And so it's a very insidious insertion into the modern civilization of the mortal realms. It's wild. Other thoughts? Keep them coming.
One thing I thought that was interesting is like how it has everything like organized with the various cults, and then it just calls out like the potential allies, like curselings or the Olgroids, thaumaturges, and it makes it feel like you've got your own little clique, your own little club, but then like next week we're having a special guest, and then you bring in the curseling and you eat chips and stuff as you talk about your day.
It's fun. Yeah. Well, I also like to talk that like, they try to have like, divisions of 9 and things of that nature. But like sometimes you don't, because like it's just weird and mercurial and there's no like rhyme or reason. Like everything's always changing in this like power structure here. And both they are sort of at the mercy of the whims of Tzeentch, right? And so like at any given moment, the whole power structure might change, whether someone just flat out gets eliminated or now I'm the boss, now you're the boss, who's the boss now? And it's just, it's very ever shifting because that is Tzeentch. Tzeentch is ever shifting. It's in the name, change of ways, which I thought was interesting for sure. Will, you had mentioned allies, and I thought maybe this is where we were going to go, but it wasn't, which is fine because we're going to go there now. Do the Disciples of Tzeentch, do they have any allies as a faction, like from a faction perspective? Do they have other factions out there that they're pals with, which is tricky for Chaos Gods because they don't, it's not normal. But did any allies jump at you fellas? Anything float your boat?
Nobody and everybody.
I mean, some of the stuff canonically, like from the book War Queen, which came from eons ago, but they talk about a Tzeentchian cult that has essentially Darko Savagers that worship them. and just the different cultists and the varying cultists that would find their way, if you will, to the Changer of Ways. So you see some Slaves to Darkness that would work and follow up with the Changer of Ways, because it just seems to work out well, right? You also have all the Zangor hordes, right? When it comes to Tzeentch, he's like, Gors are cool, and when you read the Beast of Chaos book, it talks about how regular Beasts of Chaos, some of them think it's weak to declare yourself a god, but the Zangor hosts are huge, and they're massive, and it takes regular Gors and Bestigors and turns them into this all-new, in some ways, much more powerful version of themselves, and really elevates them. So you see some of that, too. So I think... and it even talks about this in the Age of Beast part of this book, where regular Gors are transmuting into Zangors at an alarming rate, and humans and Carricks are turning into Zangors at an alarming rate now that Kragnos is back. And I think that's really cool.
You brought up sort of Slaves to Darkness, and I think there's other like directions that allies from Tzeentch come from there. So I think I mentioned earlier, but talking about the Gaunt Summoners, right? So they're ostensibly under Archaon's thumb, and yet they still are, they, derive their power from Tzeentch, right? They're Tzeentchian demons. And so although allies, I mean, this is not a relationship that anybody wants in particular besides maybe Archaon. It's in doing so, there is that intrinsic link that they're always going to have, because the Gaunt Summoners are still going to be, tied to the Slaves to Darkness side of things as well. So like it's an allyship under duress, but an allyship nonetheless, which I thought was interesting. Will, it sounded like you were going to say something.
Yeah, so another ally, which is actually cross Grand Alliance, is sometimes Cities of Sigmar, in the sense that they overtake the cities and things like that. And it sounds goofy, but also in the new Path to Glory section for Tzeentch, you can unlock Cities of Sigmar as an ally. So it's lore that's also being supported by the rules of that they are absorbing the free cities.
That's interesting. So I didn't read the Path to Glory stuff, but that's fun. I mean, it's whether it's inadvertent or vertent. Yeah, right. It seems as if where go the Cities of Sigmar, there goes Tzeentch too. So right, like there's a linkage there too. What is the Realm of Light Warcry warband called? Cypher Lords. Look it up. You guys aren't as fast as Google. I know this isn't exactly what I'm normally asking when I ask this question, and yet I was trying to find other Slaves to Darkness like connections. And so we know that those cultists in the Slaves to Darkness, that those Warcry warbands, basically, right? A lot of the hallmark of what they do is that they worship chaos in forms that like they don't know of the chaos gods specifically, but they worship chaos gods and like how they interpret the chaos gods. And I think oftentimes we try to guess like who are they really worshiping without knowing who they're worshiping. And so I think the Cypher Lords are a prime example of folks worshiping Tzeentch and not knowing that they're worshiping Tzeentch. And so, again, this is a stretch towards the question of who their allies are, but this is another pocket of Slaves to Darkness that I think are tied to Tzeentch without maybe not even knowing it. So,
well, and the Corvus Cabal definitely feel very Tzeentchian as well, with all their bird themes and the Great Gatherer. But I know I said, kind of cheekily, anybody and nobody, right? But that really is it. Tzeentch is one of those factions where it literally can be anybody can work with Tzeentch and anybody cannot work with Tzeentch. Because it is such an insidious idea, and that's the whole point of why the Chaos Gods have such power, is because it is a simple thing to think, I don't have money and somebody else has money and that needs to work, right? I don't have power and somebody else has power and I want that power. And it just like how in the realm of death, if you believe that an afterlife exists, then it exists. And you can go there and you can live out your days of afterlife in this heaven or hell, whatever. But the same thing is, you don't actually need to believe that Tzeentch exists, because he already does, because so many people have prayed to him and worked for him. And so it's not even, you have to have a bunch of your friends. It's literally just you. If you're just like, I'm gonna pray that change is coming and my lot in life will turn, and that's it. And then you get these powers, and then you start changing and start mutating or whatever, and that's it. That's all you need. It's such a personal thing, like most of the Chaos Gods, and it literally can be anyone.
I think it's interesting too. You brought up mutation, Paul. The Beast of Chaos God Morgr used to be the master of mutation, and I kind of want to see in the Age of Beasts that battle come to fruition, like Morgar versus Tzeentch, about who's the most mutagenic of the two. I think that'd be kind of a neat battle to see, Beast of Chaos versus Tzeentch. Be fun.
Clans Molder's like, let me get in on this. Hey, let me show you a thing or two. Very cool. So, I mean, Paul, you had mentioned that like anybody could be their ally, and to the same degree, everybody can be his enemy. So, like, I think it's a given when it comes to Chaos Gods that, like, you're right, everybody can be Tzeentch's enemy. In fact, oftentimes Tzeentch is Tzeentch's enemy. But were there any hallmark enemies that you guys wanted to bring up? There's the one obvious one. Whoever gets there first gets dibs. Who are Tzeentch's enemies?
It is like Nurgle. Nurgle is
Nurgle.
specifically called out in the Battletome as Tzeentch's enemy because Tzeentch is all about change, all about making things different. Nurgle is all about stagnation, all about giving in to despair, which is the opposite of what Tzeentch is. And it's funny because when I read that, I was like, oh, this is going to be Khorne, because Khorne hates magic. But no, it was Nurgle. And so I don't know if that was actually a change in the lore or a new interpretation of it. But I seem to remember way back in the day that it was always Khorne versus Tzeentch, but maybe I'm just crazy and old.
At least as long as Age of Sigmar has existed, that's been the dichotomy. And I want to say it predates Age of Sigmar too. I don't know for sure. I always objected to that, and I thought, yes, Khorne versus Tzeentch seems to be the obvious objection. In that, yes, I get the point they're trying to make about like Tzeentch wants to break cycles, right? The cycles are nothing to him; he doesn't want that. Whereas Nurgle's like, no. There's a cyclical nature to things. It goes from one to the other, back and forth. That's it. And I see why that's different, but like magic versus not magic seems like a stronger thing, like a stronger abstract objection, sort of. But apparently not. I was overruled. So be it. I get it. It seems as if Tzeentch has all sorts of chaos gods who ought not be his friends for sure. Do you guys have any other Nurgle thoughts per se, or did we just sum up the fight there?
I think that pretty sums it up.
Yeah, right. Excellent. I think we might even touched on it in the Nurgle Battletome episode. Maybe. Can't remember.
Other enemies would be the Dwarden, called out specifically with Grimney and the Ether War. Kind of in a similar thing. A lot of Dwarden they're stubborn. They're not prone to change, which makes them the opposite of Tzeentch. And then, as Paul mentioned, they don't use magic. So he just doesn't understand them from the get-go and wants them to change.
Maybe flip them upside down. Like, I don't know, look at it from a different angle, Tzeentch.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the other thing too is he like broke their house. Like he like broke their area. He's like, "Yo, what's up? I hear you like the Spiral Crux area. Be a shame if I threw a griffin at it. For shame."
Griffin, the one weakness.
You've really got an Achilles griffin there, Duarden.
Oh man, P tier Griffin. All right, cool. So, any other enemies you guys want to talk about?
I'm gonna go in and throw one last wrench.
Bring it.
Tzeentch. Tzeentch is his own enemy.
You got it.
It talks specifically about how Tzeentch is just like, I kind of don't like it when people win. I really like despair. Also, I really like change. So even if you're like the most impressive, most honored Lord of Change, there's no guarantee that tomorrow you're going to be the most honored or I'm going to care about you. So Tzeentch is Tzeentch's own worst enemy because they're constantly looking for reasons to overthrow each other and scheme and plan, etc.
Me and Tzeentch have that in common. All right, let's talk about some of our favorite units in this here faction or army or whatever the term is. Did you guys have any favorite things in this army, whether it's for lore reasons or for aesthetic reasons? Heck, maybe even rule reasons, which doesn't make any sense to me, but sure. Who were some of your faves and why? I'll give Vint the chance since this is his first go around. Vint, who was your faves out there, fave or faves, and tell us about them.
When it comes to characters, I really like Atrazan. When it comes to, and he's just a fate skimmer, which is neat, right? It's a cool model. They're just fun, and the fact that he likes to blow stuff up and burn things to a crisp. When Tzeentch is like subtle, 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 he's like, haha, but I've got flames, right? Burn it all. He's a cool character, and I've got a Fate Skimmer painted up as much as I could to look exactly like him. But when it comes to like cool things in this codex that they talked about, the horrors are always good. They're just fun. The characteristics of blues being mean and angry with like the blue scribes, one of them can read and the other one can't write. And it's just, it's beautiful. Like the cool dichotomies that are pushed into the horrors of all shapes and sizes is just neat. A pink horror is a scrambling, babbling, nonsensical thing, and then you get the blue horrors and they're just generally mean. Like I like that was a characteristic of this very small creature that goes around hurling flames. I feel like they're kids with rocks that are just angry and you're all ants, and I think that they're super cool and in all things, right? It's very Tzeentchian. This pink thing could split into two smaller things that remembers everything. No, we're not going to do that. They're just going to be freaking angry. And then the other one that I really liked is the Ogreoid Thaumaturge. I've liked him since the Silver Tower. The model was just super cool. The lore jumps in and it's super fun, and having a combative Ogreoid that got his powers as the Ogreoids, their species gets kind of pushed into the Slaves to Darkness and kind of left by Kragnos and some of the other gods that might have had a hand in helping them. They get left to the Chaos Waste, and the ones that swear themselves to Tzeentch are just super cool in the fact that they're like, yeah, I'm all muscle and I can definitely out bench press you, Sigmarite, but I can also like cast some cool spells as my fury and rage actually come through in a spell form. And I think that's really neat, like tying something that would normally feel very cornate, like, oh, I'm angry and I'm big and strong, but instead making it sound almost more like a Goku or some other character where they're just going to hit you with a harder Kamehameha, right? That you haven't seen before. And so I really his power level is way over 9,000. And to see some of that reflected in the rules where, yeah, I can fight, but also I can cast some super bad apple spells or cast some really cool tentacle spells is really neat. And it's neat because he's got writhing tendrils as his spell. And I just think that that's a cool image. Like this Ogreoid who wants to jump in and beat you up is going to trap you with these tentacles from the ground so you can't get away. And it's super neat. The imagery and the idea of these large bovine characters being able to fight as well as cast magic, similar to like the Curseling. It's a really cool image and a really cool character concept.
Yeah, I agree. I love that we're going to find out more about Ogreoids. Presumably, I know it's not this book; it's going to be the Slaves book. But like, we get the idea that they used to be this destruction faction, and they felt abandoned by they needed to fall to chaos then, and they found their home on whether it's the Tzeentch side of things or the Slave to Chaos things. I want to find more about like the history of that race, and it's. Knowing that is being expanded upon has only made me like the Thaumaturge more. Like knowing that it's not just this guy, but there's more to it than that has made me like this guy more, which I think is pretty cool. Just as an aside, Christling asks, any mention of ogres? And I think the answer is no. The Ogreoid's maybe as close as we get to him. I know it's not an ogre, but it's got like ogre in the name. So sorry, I think this might be as close as we get to ogres in this book. Do you guys agree? Am I wrong?
No, there's no ogres.
All right, so I'm hearing head nods. So sorry, this is. Can we have ogres? No, we have ogres at home. It's Ogreoids.
So can I just make a quick note? We always get the question, what about beasts? Do they talk anything about beasts in this book? Beasts are literally losing to beasts in this book because the Gores are turning into Zangors. Yeah. So yes, we do hear about beasts. Yes, they're still losing. They didn't even get a little blurb talking about how they're losing this time, though. But they still lost.
Sure.
But if you think about it, Zangors are still in the beast book. So all those normal people are now beasts. So it balances out.
Yeah, I think equilibrium for sure. Will, did you have any favorites from this battle?
Yeah, so the one I was going to talk about was going to be the Kyric Acolytes, which we had talked about before. They were just the standard cultists. And the cool thing about it is like they are the main human mortal unit of this army, but they're not normally found in an army. Normally someone like blows the whistle and all the librarians and all the candle makers and the clock makers just come storming into the streets, put on a mask, get really buff, and start stabbing people. So it's interesting to think like one of the main units for an army like does not operate in a way a unit would in any sort of standard military.
Sleeper agents, kind of.
Yeah.
Very neat. Right on. Paul, did you have any faves that you wanted to chat about?
Yeah, I don't know why. Probably because I'm a dork. But I love flamers.
We all are.
The flamers are just so weird. Like, they're literally just like fungus flopping flame machines. And it kind of talks about that in the background. It's just they don't even have legs. They just kind of like exhaust hot air to mobile themselves, and just they go across the battlefield and just, yep, I'm flopping around, burning your butt, and having a great time doing it. And if I'm really cool, I even get a chariot, so I don't even have to flop around. I just sit on a chariot and literally just flamethrower you all over the place. So, yeah, no, I love the flamers because they're just so weird. And there's one of those things that just super Warhammer and just super weird and nonsensical. So, yeah, that's it. Flamers.
I think it's a coincidence because it's a coincidence that they're mushroomy. And Paul likes
I wouldn't
them.
call that a coincidence. I think that's a very strong reason why they're my favorite. But I also, before I even collected goblins, I actually did get the old 5th edition flamers, and for some reason I just thought they were super fun. But they did have a very strong fungus effect there, so like the miniatures themselves looked like a piece of fungus that was flopping around. So yeah,
I think the coolest thing with flamers, Paul, that I liked was that it's not even flames. They're like the D100 roll 100 times of what the magic item is or what the magic power is. They're like, am I burning you? Am I casting fireball, burning hands, and cure greater wounds? And the answer is yes to all. Like, I'm going to heal you, but it's always going to be net negative because I'm going to be mass mutating you, or I'm going to be doing some other awful thing to your body or whatever they're attacking.
I'm literally a live fungus flopping across the battlefield. Why wouldn't I have 100 things that I can do to you?
I will say I kind of wish they had a new sculpt though, right? I feel like they might need a little updating, maybe to be more fungusy, perhaps, if that's the direction they need to go.
Yeah, not wrong.
All right, my favorite I think is probably the Lord of Change. I think that's I think it's the best greater demon even that they make. I think it outclasses all the rest of them.
It's
I think
a cool kit.
It is super legit. So these guys are one of the highest echelons. So they do spend some time talking in the book about like how the Lords of Change are like the top of the pile, top dogs, top birds, I guess. And then literally a few pages later, they're like, no, but Gaunt Summoners are actually better than that. So it's like, okay, come on, pick one. Anyways, so the Lords of Change are neat, the greater demons. I like that they spend so much time talking, like quite a bit of time talking about how they will fly away. Like they don't want to engage with you. They'd rather just shoot spells at you from afar, unlike all the other greater demons. And so that like they're not above. I mean, they are above you because they're flying, but they're not above flying away as a tactic so that they can cast their spells, which is legit. And they say, all right, even if you can get past their arcane defenses, even if you land a blow, like they've got really tough skin, but like, frankly, that's not going to happen. So like, good luck trying to even touch them. So I think it's the greatest model and they exude power for sure. I don't think I have anything else to add about the Lords of Change. Do you guys have any other models or units that you want to talk about?
Yeah, just a real quick, I'm just realizing that if the Kyric Acolytes are a bunch of nerds that get turned buff through magic, the Curseling is like the exact opposite. It's a buff jock that Tzeentch stapled a nerd onto.
So yep. Whisper nerd secrets into his ear. Yeah. That's true.
Nerds!
So we do have another question. Hankerin asks, how are the Gaunt Summoners faring with their slave work for Archaon? Do we get any real updates, or should we even talk about what the Gaunt Summoner? I guess we've already touched on the fact that Archaon owns these dudes. Basically, Archaon a long time ago found out all the Gaunt Summoners' names, and they're demons. And so once that you know their names, you sort of control them. How's that working out for them? And do you guys have anything to talk about from the Gaunt Summoner perspective?
So it's interesting because it never actually, like, it mentions that they work for Archaon, but it never talks about what that relationship is like. Mainly the story we dive into is the Gaunt Summoner mentioned in Broken Realms who failed horribly to the Seraphon. He's just sort of getting horribly. He's just getting tortured forever. And as his silver tower is slowly being rebuilt, Tzeentch is just punishing him for not thinking ahead enough to see this coming.
And I love that, like, not only is he, like, being tortured horribly for an infinity, but, like, yeah, of course he is. He failed. Like, yeah, this is just normal life for a God Summoner. Like, yeah, of course you're being tortured indefinitely. You mean it didn't work out perfectly? How dare you? I mean, I might have been the one that made sure it didn't work out perfectly, but still, how dare you?
Yeah. Well, and it answers a question I had from Broken Realms of, okay, there's 9 Gaunt Summoners, and then we see one of them explode. What the heck happens? The answer is, well, he's going to be punished forever until it's time for him to come back.
Yeah, because being a demon, they reform, right? Out in the, the void.
So they're never going to die. They're just always going to just get, when they die, they go to what we imagine hell to be, which is just being tortured forever.
What's hell for a demon, right? What's a demon hell? Like, I imagine when I go there will be demons there, but it's not the same as demon hell for sure. I always thought it was fun that, like, there's only 9 of these Gaunt Summoners, so every time you put a Gaunt Summoner in your army, it's one of those 9, whether you like it or not. So you might as well pick one. And I haven't been writing the list down. I bet the Lexicanum probably has it, but I'd be curious to, like, refresh myself on what some of their names are, which is I know what I'm doing after this episode.
The Eater of Eyes is the one that died in Broken Realms.
Oh, I'm not sure.
Eater of Tomes, I think.
Eater of Tomes, because there's the Tyrant of Eyes.
Mm-hmm. I thought it was wild that, like, they really make it a point to be like, these Gaunt Summoners. I think they even say that, like, these are the masters of magic. Like, that it seems as if they are even above and beyond what the Lords of Change are. And yet they still are in service to Archaon, right? Like, so these are it feels like some of the most powerful casters on the face of the planet, which is the mortal realms, and yet they still answer to somebody. Everybody's got a boss, which is wild. And I'm just going to keep talking. One thing that I don't know that I've ever read before, though I don't know if it's new or not. I can't remember if it was in any sort of previous books before, but it does spend some time talking about the fact that the Gaunt Summoners fell under Archaon's sway to some degree because Tzeentch let it happen, or maybe he even encouraged it to happen. Like, he pushed them in that direction. I didn't know that he had sabotaged that relationship, and why he took some sort of glee knowing that, like, these really powerful, like, all powerful, like, casters, like, no, I don't think so. Let me humble you a little bit by linking some of your names, maybe all your names, to Archaon so that you're in service to this dude. So in some ways, it's Tzeentch giving up some bit of his own power in the form of these Gaunt Summoners over to this champion of, a champion undivided, which noteworthy, interesting for sure.
Hashtag unreliable narrator. Who knows if he actually did that or not?
Right? That maybe lost his dude.
It might be like revisionist history of, like, oh, I totally did that. That was totally my plan.
Yeah. Well, and it even says, like, Archaon has no idea the aid Tzeentch gave him. So it's like, yeah. If you ask anyone, they'll have no idea. But I definitely
I totally didn't. I didn't get fired. I quit. So there's that. Yeah, very cool. Other models or units before we keep going? All right, let's keep the train rolling. This book, as with every other Battletome, they have a bunch of sub-factions, groupings or factions that are emblematic of sort of like hallmark features of these armies. We've got a whole bunch of them here because we're dealing with both demons and mortals. Did you guys have any favorite sub-factions that you wanted to chat about and tell the listeners about?
I know it's going to surprise everybody that's listened so far, but the Eternal Conflagration is kind of my jam. Flamers everywhere, everything explodes. What a time to be alive. they're just cool, right? Atrazan shows up, he burns Vindicarum to the ground, gets aced by some Grugni worshippers, and is like, "Whatever, dude, I'm a demon. I'll be back." And it's just cool. Yeah, he's like, "Oh no, you blew up a silver tower. Same book, blowing up Vindicarum. Do not care." And it's just super cool to see him and like see the Legion at work. You get Conflagration host and a couple other scenes as well where they're doing some big stuff, but the reality is that they're the nuclear deterrent I feel Tzeentch uses when he's like, "I absolutely do not care what happens to this city. Sure, civilization's good for me, but man, do I need this city to just burn." And using them that way is kind of neat. I also I think their leader's name is the Radiant One, or some very out there sequin wearing, very, very fancy name, and you've got like the Watcher of Tomes and the Watcher of Many Eyes and all these like very creepy names, and then you've got like the Radiant One. Like I feel like he's about to Macho Man Randy Savage his way through the next Lord Celestant that fights him. So, oh yeah, slap into some chaos magic. So I think they're my favorite. I like the I've always liked the transient form. They've been really cool too, just to kind of see them watch and develop through different systems, because you have Vortemis, who's a magister for them, and the Eyes of Nine that are like mercenaries that are hired out by other Tzeentch Arcanite groups and other cults, and seeing them perform in the different settings that they have evolved in is just kind of neat to see those models and see that story grow. And I think that's really cool. The transient form's also neat because they're like, "Oh, Carrick's cool. Like, I understand you like Tzeentch. That's neat. You're going to have to earn your Zangorage, though," and makes them push that extra bit harder. And you see that related flawlessly in the new rules, for those of you who are interested in that part.
But who would ever have? I would have thought that your Arcanite faction, you would have been a fan of the Pyrophane cult then instead, because they seem to be the immortal version of the Conflagration. If the Eternal Conflagration is demons, then I would have thought the Pyrophane cult would have been up your alley. To that end, I got a listener question, and it's me. I'm the listener question. I still don't understand what the difference is between Eternal Conflagration and Pyrophane cult. The book even says, "Oh no, it's not the same thing. Don't be fooled." I can't tell what the difference is though.
So it's kind of like how Vint mentioned before with the Eternal Conflagration, where it's not just actual fire, but it looks like fire, but it's all this mutation, it's all this change. You're turned into a flower pot as a bunch of whales fall past you in the sky.
Sure.
Completely. And the Pyrophane cult does something different, where it just literally takes a flamethrower and burns everything down.
Gotcha.
It's the act of actual fire as an agent of change.
So the Eternal Conflagration it's weird flame. It's a mechanism by which to change things, whereas Pyrophane cult is we're talking literal fire, actual fire.
The Pyrophane cult operates very differently too when you see it in City of Secrets, because I believe they're the bad guys in that book from early Age of Sigmar. But I think their MO is more we need to learn it. If there were warcasters in the group, right? If you were to look at all of Tzeentch's hosts and be like, "These guys are built for war," the Pyrophane cult would be the foot soldiers. They would be the average Joe with a fireball magic missile spell memorized to infinity and beyond, and they're just going to go do that as hard as they can, as much as they can, maximized through the moon.
Sure. Right on. Will, what was your fave faction?
My fave was the Cult of 1,000 Eyes.
It's too many eyes. Dial it down.
900. We'll top it off at that.
That's A-okay. Every little bit helps.
Yeah. Or I guess 999, since it's his favorite number.
Sure.
Is that too much? I don't know.
It might be a little too much. But if the Pyrophane cult is the foot soldiers, the Cult of 1,000 Eyes is your stereotypical cultists. They avoid the battlefield as much as they can. Whenever they do draw weapons, it's to pop up out of nowhere and stab everyone around them. Because all of their plans are more insidious. They're the ones who are corrupting Dawnbringer crusades. They're the ones who are slowly bleeding out societies. And also it says that they just love going up against the Order of Azir just to see who's more clever. It's like going after, it's like the mouse chasing the cat, daring them to come after them.
Moriarty and Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I have nothing.
Spy versus spy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I have nothing to add. That was a perfect explanation. I just also love them. They're super fun.
Very cool. Paul, did you have another faction you wanted to talk about, or is that it?
I can talk about the Unbound Flux.
Yeah, sure.
I also enjoy, because they're literally just madness. They're like, what do? We drive you mad. Okay, but like, do you win things? Yeah, we win things by driving you mad. Yeah, but like, what's the thing that you really like doing? We like driving people mad. Okay, I guess that's what you do. So they really thrive on turning people insane with craziness, basically. So it's fun.
What else is there than driving people insane with craziness? You guys,
crazy.
okay, that's definitely a bug.
That's $1.
Yeah, Vin's getting the hang of it.
You were whale singing before too. I think that's 2.
Animal singing is double the price. You guys took all the good sub factions, the ones that I wanted to talk about. There's the host duplicitous, which is a bunch of demons who are real sneaky and they like illusions and like subterfuge and I don't know, hiding, I suppose. I don't know. I wasn't ready to talk about any of these other ones because the other ones are cooler, frankly. The ones you guys talked about were cooler for sure. There's the host arcanum, which is also a demon subfaction. They're all about spellcasting, magic, and things of that nature. Transient form is cultists that like mutate and stuff. Guild of summoners like summoning demons. I think that's all of them. I don't have anything else to add. They've got a lot of good ones though, and I think a lot of the flavor or lore for a faction comes out the most, or like is through these sub factions. That's where they can really like start dripping some really clear themes, right? And maybe it's a little on the nose sometimes. Maybe it's a little obvious, but I think it's a great way to highlight the multifacets of these armies. And every army seems to have these facets that are worth exploring. And so Tzeentch is no different. In fact, he may have more facets than most, and they are reflected in these sub factions. So they're very cool. Cool. Any other sub faction thoughts before we keep going? We're getting there.
My only thought is I feel like they just needed to add one more sub-faction because they did 4 and 4, like 4 demons, 4 mortals, but we're just one away from getting that number 9.
Although true, I think they even, yes, correct, period, end of thought. Additionally, I think there's 9 demon sub-factions and there's 9 mortal sub-factions, and so we're short quite a bit on both sides, actually. But yes, it would for the balance of this book, it would have been nice to have 9 total. But I think they were saying that like there's of the 9 total like demon subfactions, here's the 4 that are like in preeminence or something like that. Is what I think. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong though. At any rate.
Oh, yep. Oh, there it is.
But even so, they were so close in the book. Why not just throw in another subfaction between one or the other, and then you got your square 9. All right. Let's talk about some special characters. I feel like normally at this point in the episode, we've talked about the special characters so much that it's not worth bringing them up again. But in this one, I feel like we haven't really touched on many of them at all. Did you guys have, except for the changeling, because everybody's the changeling. Did you guys have any favorite special characters that you wanted to bring up?
Changeling. We already brought him up, so.
Because he's everyone.
Exactly.
Kairos Fate Weaver is pretty cool in that he is a Lord of Change that... so apparently there's this like madness center of the Crystal Labyrinth, which is Tzeentch's realm of chaos, basically. And it's so wild and out there that even Tzeentch doesn't know the full nature of this like sort of epicenter of his maze, essentially. And so he takes one of his Lords of Change, Kairos Fate Weaver, and he says, you know what, you're basically an extension of me. What better way to learn about this thing is throw a little bit of myself into it. Whoops, it dropped you in. And he drops Fate Weaver into and so he's down there for I don't know how long, but eventually he pops back out, this Kairos Fate Weaver, and he's got 2 heads. So like maybe that's just it. Like maybe it's a portal that doubles your heads. No, not quite. What it does is it imbues Kairos Fate Weaver with a particular set of skills or a bit of knowledge. Basically, his 2 heads now see time a little differently. One head has perfect recollection of the past and can see everything that's ever occurred previously with crystal clarity. And he's got another head that can clearly predict the future. Like he knows exactly how everything's going to go down. However, there's a shortcoming to all this, in that he cannot perceive the present. So he knows the past, he knows the future, but he doesn't live in the now. Which, I mean, goes against all sorts of self-help stuff that I think we all like hear about, right? We need to be more present, but no, not this guy. And so it's interesting that Tzeentch is like, yes, this individual who knows knows the past perfectly and knows the future perfectly. I'm going to send him to war where he can't even like understand the things that are going on right in front of him. He couldn't dodge a blade if he had to. And he sends them out to battle, and he has all sorts of warping magic and blah, blah. He's an incredible, powerful caster, but at the same time, like, he has to avoid a lot of fighting because like he couldn't turn a blade because he can't see the now in front of him. I mean, sure, maybe he could like preemptively not be in the place where the fight was going to be, or he knows how the fight's going to turn out. And so I guess maybe he wouldn't be in places where he knows that he would die. But like, watch out, man. Like if somebody snuck in, I guess you can't sneak up on him per se, but like he has a weakness if you could ever try and like turn it on him somehow. But that's Kairos Fate Weaver in a nutshell. Do you guys got anything to add?
No, just to call back to one of the stories from the Age of Myth, where it just says like he shows up because someone somehow, some way said his name out loud for the first time ever. And I'm just imagining like two scribes sitting together, like looking at one of those forbidden books, just like trying to ask the other person, how do you pronounce this word I'm looking at? Like, oh, I think it's Kairos Fate Weaver. And then just suddenly the entire society is cursed.
Oh gosh. I'm trying to think of it. I made the Peter Griffin joke before, but they're like, all right, so we need to come up with a snazzy new name for this character for this book that I'm writing. I don't know, Kai Rose. And he sees and then a Weaver, and boom. I was just waiting for it.
Well, Kai and Ro are two Greek letters, so Kai.
I think Kairos itself is a Greek word.
Is it?
Yeah, for like time or something like that.
I've learned something today.
I gotta look it up now.
Yeah, me too.
Oh no, it's the right critical or opportune moment, in fact. But I know it has something to do with time, which
it's really funny because it's the ironic definition. The right, perfect, and critical moment, which he literally cannot
see
ever.
Does this mean he can't read his own name?
I wonder if that was intentional.
Can he write? Like, can he read?
I don't know.
He can't perceive the present time. Like, is he functionally just an illiterate? It was like, I can read in the future. I can write in the future, but I can't now.
Well, speaking of reading and writing, there's another special character that I think been named earlier, but there's the Blue Scribes.
The Blue Scribes.
Someone tell me about the Blue Scribes.
Ixtaprap and Praptorix. They're cool. Right, they're given the impossible task of getting every single spell known by anybody ever that's ever been cast ever, and they have to write them all down. And to make things worse, one of them can't read, and the other one can't write. I think it's something to that effect. Yeah, one can't read, one can't write, and they have to write all the spells. So they're mad, and they don't trust each other. That was newly defined in this, is that neither of them trust the other one. They think that the other one's lying the whole time. So in this game of we have to learn everything, they're like, it'd be a shame if I was lying to you. Oh, it would. You liar. And they fight incessantly, but when pushed into battle to try and catch these things, they're like, well, we better make sure everybody like around us knows what they're doing, and then we're just going to hurl random spells at you. We don't really know what they are, but here, take this one. This one seems spicy.
All right.
And then they just fling them, and that's pretty cool.
They're very neat. These guys also need a new model, frankly. I mean, not to be judgy, but come on, Blue Scribes.
You can do some really cool Kit Bashy stuff out of the Burning Chariot set. I know, Aaron. But because they come with all the books in the universe, the Fate Skimmer or Burning Chariot kit comes with these chanting horrors that fit perfectly on the base, and you just put books all around them, and you have this beautiful, beautiful Blue Scribe model. That's in plastic.
Say Kit Bash again.
Vince, first and last time on the Mortal Realms podcast.
I'll say it again, it makes him scared.
Just run. This episode's over. All right. Very cool. And then, so it's the Blue Scribes and then the Changeling, which we talked about. Here's the point of the show where I ask, hey, do you guys have any other tidbits, other thoughts, other things that you want to bring up, things that jumped out at you in this book that you couldn't sleep tonight if we didn't chat about in this?
So it's a really weird little thing, but the Eyes of the Nine are in the Battletome, but the Eyes of the Nine are not in the lore.
Yeah, it's becoming more and more common.
Yeah. So I was like, I wouldn't have minded reading a little bit about the Eyes of the Nine.
I'm not going to go over to my bookshelf to check, but I wonder if they were in the last Battletome. I think that would have been the only one because they probably post-dated the Battletome before that, so that might have been the only opportunity for them to show up. However, listeners, if you guys want to find out more about the Eyes of the Nine, they had a little short in the, I want to say, Dire Chasm compilation from Black Library. And they were great. That was one of the best shorts in that compilation for sure. I can't remember their names. Charik or something like that is the
Kacharik and all the cool Carricks and the horrors, and they all had personalities. And I think that's always good when you can give something little a personality and make it matter.
Awesome. Charik specifically, I think, is maybe the POV in the short story, and he's legit. He's pretty cool. So, listeners, you're not going to find it in this Battletome, but if you want to find out more about the Eyes of the Nine, check out the compilation from Black Library. Dark Chasm, I think. All right. Other tidbits or thoughts that we missed that you guys wanted to bring up? Cool. Because then we'll go into the Black... What a great segue. Speaking of the Black Library recommendations, did you guys have any Black Library stories that fans of the Disciples of Tzeentch ought to check out that you've enjoyed? Who's got any recommendations for Tzeentch stuff from Black Library?
I like Insidious Secrets, War Queen. There's a lot of really good ones from right out of the gate. Those two just really come through as like good descriptors and good ways to see how a cult would act and how they would function. And the War Queen story shows like how a generic worshiper of chaos following Tzeentch would find their way, and how absolutely crazy and chaotic it can be. If you can find any of those books to dig up, or I don't know if they're on Warhammer Vault because that's got some really strange stuff in it too.
They might sell the ebooks still at the very least, for those who are ebook inclined. City of Secrets would have been my recommendation. I think that's a great one. I mean, it's a great story, and then it also has some good Tzeentch representation in that, so I echo that one. I'll pause before I add more. Does anybody else have any other Black Library?
So one is Overlords of the Iron Dragon.
Oh, sure.
Even though it's a Caradron-focused story, we get a lot of different Tzeentchian perspectives as we have this essentially coven sort of fighting amongst itself, and you get a bunch of cool characters. I think there's a Fate Master, and I know there's a Curseling, and then we do get a Lord of Change. And it's fun because you see all of their plots going on, all this backstabbing. But then the Caradron don't really know any of this is going on in the background. The Tzeentch is always eating its own tail.
That's funny. Paul, did you have any Black Library recommendations?
Yes. I am going to go with, from our friend of the show, Track of Words. He had mentioned Hammerhall and Other Stories.
Yeah, I remember that.
Which I remember that first short story is actually Hammerhall versus Tzeentch, and I really enjoyed that story. That was the first thing that came to mind when I thought about that. So it's a lot of POV of Tzeentch, and I thought it was really well done. So yeah, I'm gonna go with that.
And it's Josh Reynolds. You can't go wrong with a Josh Reynolds story for sure. I'm harkening back. So like Tzeentch, I think has been an adversary in the moral realm since like. Hallmark antagonist, I could maybe say, for a lot of the stories dating back to like the early days of the Age of Sigmar. So he's always been around and really has, he being his faction and always, been fairly present for a lot of those stories. So I'm going to harken back all the way to the very beginning where the Call of Chaos and the Call of Archaon were both a series of short stories that ended up being compiled into a much larger narrative. Some might say even novel. And so there are a couple of good Tzeentch stories in there. I don't have all their names in front of me, but I think those were great introductions to Tzeentch in the moral realms, even back all the way in the, like I said, the early days of Age of Sigmar. So that was great. And then just recently, I know there's a Tzeentch presence in God's Bane from Dale Lucas that we just read. And there's a couple other stories, one or two that like Tzeentch is in, but I don't want to say because it gives away like the mystery of what yeah, exactly. So it's hard to, that's the point of Tzeentch, right? Like it's a certain mysterious element. You don't often know if it is Tzeentch messing with stuff. So it's a little tricky to recommend them.
So you didn't want to recommend a story that's got like a dwarden fighting a skeleton and then say, yeah, this is a Tzeentch story, right?
What the what? Dear listener, throw a dart at a dartboard full of Black Library stories, and there's a good chance Tzeentch is going to be in that book. So let's see how it plays out. So any other Black Library recommendations? Because here we are, home stretch. There's only one or a couple more things I want out of you guys. The most important being is, what did you think of this here Battletome? Look, give me a little review. Let's reflect on it as a whole. Paul, set the tone. I'll let you go first. What did you think of this one?
I would give it 6 out of 8 spider legs. I really enjoyed that it felt like it moved the story forward. It dealt a lot with the present moment. And yeah, no, it was good. I enjoyed reading it.
Okay, cool. Will, second most senior, I guess. Well, what would you think of this Battletome?
I will give it 8 out of 9 change cults.
That's high.
I always feel weird going into these like mostly demon-centric Battletomes just because I feel like I can't get a grasp of like demon stories, but I think Tzeentch did a really good job of showing us how he spreads his influence across the different realms, really playing his hand, and we kind of see how he reacts when it's a plan that's not his, and he's just sort of enjoying it or trying to capitalize on it as much as we can. It's a interesting perspective from a guy who makes all these plans when you're seeing him react to something.
Sure. It's like a dog chasing cars. Hey, Vent, what do you think of this Battletome? In any metric you wanna come up with, all yours.
Well, I liked the change cult one. I was thinking that same thing, but I think we'll go with. I really liked this a lot. I'm gonna go with 9 out of 9 flaming spells. Yeah, no, it's very good. You go through this. The storyline is great. The art in the book is fantastic. Adding some of the stuff from the Arcane Cataclysm box to the art in the book. Not getting into too much of the crunch of it, but that's good too. It feels nice. The Crusade is cool. There's just a lot of good to it. And I didn't feel there was no point in reading the book where I was like, man, I really wish they would have put this one story in, or they would have alluded to this. I know Vortemis didn't quite get his time, but I don't think that maybe the Battletome is the place where they need to add that. Right? I think, it'd be cool if it was there. But that's the only thing, right, is that little bit there. And they talk about the Eyes of the Nine in one of the pictures where they're fighting a bunch of somethings. And they're like, the Eyes of Nine get hired out by these guys, and it was cool. Liked the book a lot. Really well done, really advanced the plot. Brought it into 3rd edition Age of Sigmar, where the old book was kind of lacking in what are they doing now, So it was very good.
Cool. All right, I'm gonna just do out of 9 because that's his favorite number. We don't need to change cults or any number of things that are 9. I think I'll probably give it a 7 out of 9. To get a 9 or an 8, I think it needs to be a Battletome that's basically all new. Like it needs to be brand new delights on every single page. But that's never what this book is going to be about. I feel like I talk about this all the time from the Battletome side of things. This is a catch an army up to AOS 3.0. Now, I think it does a fairly good job of doing that because some of the Battletomes that we've talked about do very little to even reference the 3.0 stage. I mean, they'll do some hand wavy, nominal references to it, but I think a larger chunk of this book spent time talking about what is Tzeentch in the present, and that I think to some degree is all I can ask it to do. Now, to that end, maybe I should have gave it a better rating because of that, but I'm not. I have my own system, and you got to deal with it. So it was not a delight on every page because it wasn't just full of new stuff. I've actually read a Tzeentch Battletome or two before, so even that was kind of it could be repetitive, but again, that's just because I read a few of them. But I do think it offers enough newness that it was worth reopening it again, or revisiting the faction again. And that, like I said before, is basically all you can hope for. That's all you can ask at this point, short of a whole new wing or a whole new range, introducing the brand new. So yeah, because of that, I think this is a good representation or a good good entry into the mythos that is the Disciples of Tzeentch, and can't fault it for any of the things that it did. So kudos to the Tzeentch writers. I forgot to mention it at the top, and so I will bring it up right now. Hey, GW, thanks for sending us the book for us to read through and chat about. We really appreciate it. Very kind of you. I will say thanks, everyone. It's time for our reforging, but Sigmar willing, we'll be back soon. Like, subscribe, share, or leave a review. Join us on Discord, drop a tip on our Patreon. Anything you can do will spread the word of Sigmar farther than we can on our own. Chat with us anytime about your thoughts on Twitter at The Mortal Realms. And Paul, where can they find you online?
At PJ Shard.
And Wilco, where can they find you online?
At Severalon.
Excellent. And Vint, where can they find you on the internet?
In the Mortal Realms Discord, or I have a new Twitter account at DOWVint.
And I'm Aaron, and you can find me at Dos Asos, and you can find all our Mortal Realms shows and content at www.themortalrealms.com. The end.
There was a giant spider that just crawled across everything, and I had to kill him. Paul, I'm sorry, but also, my goodness, that was terrifying to try and do in sound. So if there's a gong sound in the middle of your like, comment, subscribe, it's because I had to kill some giant freaking spider.
I'm leaving it in because I feel like there's a metaphor in there with Paul. It's an active war. So call out.
I'll fight you, Paul.
Narrative
Come on the show.
I've got your
Start
narrative.
killing spiders.
I got your narrative now.
There's not enough fights on our show. Like, why don't we ever have enough fights?
They're usually off camera.
Yeah, right. True. All right.
I'll fight you on camera.
When you throw a chair at somebody, it doesn't make for good radio. All right,
No,
it's just.
Well, I mean, the sound is probably resounding. That's a pay-per-view.
I killed a spider with a lantern, Mal. How weird is that?
Asking him to change my fate.